We have 8 different Tier 1 Modern decks, and we're playing a single elimination tournament and testing the new London Mulligan rule, playing for a C note here, and just hanging out and watching some Magic here on Saturday. And yeah, we've got in round 1 Grixis Shadow versus The Rock. And yeah, this player's going to get started momentarily. What do you think? Do you think either of these decks are going to be that affected by the new Mulligan rule?
I think the Shadow deck definitely appreciates it more given the light threat density of the deck. Oftentimes the deck just can't win if it doesn't find threats to play, and it only plays what, 4 anglers, 4 shadows, and a few snapcasters.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. It feels like the Rock deck already has a bunch of redundant pieces. They're basically trying to one for one and then slowly throughout the game maybe have some incremental advantages with like a Liliana or something. So you don't super need to mulligan to specific cards, but definitely Shadow being able to mulligan to like an interactive spell and a threat seems pretty relevant.
Yeah, I think a big card of the matchup is going to be Field of Ruin. The Death Shadow deck usually doesn't play very many mana producing lands, much less red mana producing lands, and if uh, if they're kind of trading one for one, but the Rock deck is attacking the mana base of the Death Shadow deck, I think that gives the Rock a huge advantage.
Yeah, it definitely seems targeting the red lands there is where you can really get Shadow. If seems like lists have gone out of main decking Cool against Command, but that's a card that is sometimes in the main deck. But if you can just keep taking Shadow off of the red, it's gonna disrupt their ability to grind later in the game.
And you also don't have to worry about the Teamer Battle Rages getting you out of nowhere.
Very true.
So they're going down to 7 here.
Yeah, both players looking at their opening hands.
It's kind of funny because Nat usually plays a Serum Powder deck,
Oh,
but
right. Yeah, that's
he's used to it.
That's definitely an interesting card with it. If the London Mulligan gets accepted into the normal rules, so many kind of free mulligans with Serum Powder.
Something on the sleeve.
All right, Nat's keeping on the play with the turn 1 Inquisition.
Ooh, I see an Opt.
Got an Opt, got a Mishra's Bauble hanging out there, and Thoughtseize is the take off that. A cycling of a Street Wraith there. And Bobble. Looks like a Bloodstained Mire hanging out on the top. And another one from hand. That pseudo scry ability with the Bobble there. Like that seems like one of the more interesting nuances when you're playing Shadow is when you have a card like Mishra's Bauble and pairing that with fetch lands is it gives you almost that ability to scry kind of like in Legacy with like Delver of Secrets and fetch lands.
Yeah.
And so we have Street Wraith and a Fetch Shock, so that'll take Jeremy down to 15. It was just a passing of the turn there. Jeremy drew on Nat's upkeep with the Bobble trigger.
There's
And
the
Tarmogoyf. Opt for Jeremy. So yeah, that is playing Tarmogoyf. Sometimes your Tarmogoyf is just a 2/3 or a 1/2, but Jeremy's already played a creature, an artifact, fetch for a land, cast an instant, and cast a sorcery. So we got a lot of pieces in the graveyard there. And an Inquisition from Jeremy. It's going to take the Dark Confidant. It's pretty decent leftovers if Nat can draw a land here for the Tireless Tracker. Another Bloodstained Mire. So Jeremy's yet to develop a threat in this game. And looking at a 5/6 Tarmogoyf coming over. So that is a 2-turn clock as it currently sits.
I get a bob.
Looks like Nat's pickup was another Dark Confidant. It's kind of exactly what the Rock wants to do, is curve turn 1 Hand Disruption into turn 2 threat. And we missed the turn 3 Liliana, which is sort of the dream scenario, but a Dark Confidant is an acceptable substitution, it seems.
Yeah, it's a classic curve out from the deck. I don't necessarily think it's well positioned in a lot of the meta right now, but in these like fair matchups, it's really where you want to be at.
Saw an aggressive use of a Dismember there from Jeremy.
Well, if he has a Death Shadow, it's going to be much larger than the Tarmogoyf.
Would make me nervous just to play one threat on Jeremy's side here, especially when facing down a deck like the Rock that has a plethora of removal spells.
Yeah.
We're getting an Angler, so that will get around Fatal Push and delving some cards away here.
Yeah, if Nat has an answer, the game is effectively over. But I think we've already gone through one Liliana. Did we, I think maybe the Goyf was shrinked by the delve.
This is an interesting aspect of Delve versus Tarmogoyf in those situations where, like, even sometimes post-combat you could, like if you're playing a card like Logic Knot or something, you can change the math on Tarmogoyf. And we just get it passing the turn. Seems like Nat's not able to grow the Goyf.
Have we seen a red card from Jeremy?
Have not seen a red card yet.
I have seen some redless, shadowless running around online, but maybe it's just seeing the wrong half of the deck for Jeremy.
Yeah, it seems like in Shadow it's just a couple bolts and some Teamer Battle Rages usually in game 1 that are going to utilize the red mana. Wow, that was an aggressive attack there. Perhaps this could be something like a Fatal Push and a Snapcaster?
Yeah, push, snap, push would really swing the game. Have to do it while the Scoos is tapped down though.
Yeah, Nat's not really respecting that play right now by fetching a tapped Overgrown Tomb. But if I would say if I went to fetch and my opponent passed priority, and they didn't make that play, I would go ahead and fetch a tapped land.
Yeah, because once you fetch, that's the time that Jeremy would act. So
correct.
No, so. Oh, here we go.
Okay, so we're Jeremy did want to do something after Nat passed priority in the end step. It's going to get a Snapcaster on the Fatal Push. Scavenging Ooze is going to get to definitely eat that Snapcaster if Jeremy elects to block. Wonder if Jeremy's sandbagging something like Teamer Battle Rage, but doesn't fetch at the on the end step, so kind of doubting that that card's in the hand. Thought Scour. Oh, we do see a red card. An attractive looking bolt.
It's a very bold move to Thought Scour without getting out that last land with the blue to Delta.
Yeah, sometimes you accidentally just flip over all your red mana producing lands. Doesn't happen often, but it is a thing that can happen. Okay, Jeremy, fetching main phase for a tapped land.
Have to commend Jeremy's bolt choice there.
It looks so good. Also, Future Sight Tarmogoyfs, I'm a fan of.
I do like the new one, as evident by the playmats.
It is, the new art for the Tarmogoyf definitely does look more intimidating. But the Future Sight borders are really interesting. And delving away some cards for a second angler here. We're gonna get that Assassin's Trophy.
Pin it to the board. Who do you think has a bigger mouth, Gurmag Angler or the Tarmogoyf?
Tarmogoyf has more teeth. Maybe Angler has a wider mouth. And Dark Confidant deployed by Nat. Looks like Jeremy picked up another land there. I'm seeing a couple blue cards in hand. Alright. Gurmag Angler comes in for 5. Like end of turn, Nat is probably going to eat a creature, gain a life.
Once again, not respecting the Snapcaster.
Now he'll Spellbomb the pickup for Dark Confidant, so just going to lose 1 from that. I think I see another Assassin's Trophy hanging out in Nat's hand.
Ooh, maybe a Planeswalker here.
Yeah, usually 3 mana means Tireless Tracker or Liliana. Just gonna get the tracker there. The tracker and land. A little Sherlock Holmes action there.
Definitely figuring something out.
Right, Nat able to deploy the pickups off Dark Confidant and use all the mana to get the tracker and Nihil Spellbomb out there. And coming in for 3. Does Jeremy want to go to 1? Does not.
Teamer Battle Rage is lethal here.
Well, Jeremy's just passing the turn back. Hissing Quagmire, so that's what you want to do with Dark Confidant, is just flip over some lands and then actually draw some spells.
They never die to the Bob.
No, sometimes you're like, my opponent's at 7, flip over a 4-drop. Never happens. We also have the Scavenging Ooze here to gain some life if it was necessary.
Let's see what the Tyler's Tracker has found.
Have I told you my $1 million idea for a Magic product?
Is it Magic themed Clue?
It's a deck box that has a sound chip in it with buttons on it that you could record different sound effects for cards. So you can have like a lightning bolt sound or a clue sound.
What's a clue sound like? Hmm.
All right, Nat's swinging with the team, and Jeremy's going to scoop him up. This is game number 1. Goes to the Rock. Which, I would say the Rock is probably favored in this matchup because they're playing a fair amount of efficiently costed removal spells, and Jeremy is only playing a couple threats. You got Gurmag Anglers, Death Shadows, maybe one Tassiger, some Snapcasters, but Street Wraith could perhaps be a threat in the matchup because Nat's playing Swamps, but not a whole lot of threats, and the Rock has more removal than threats that Jeremy has. So unless you get really tempoed out by a Stubborn Denial, a Snapcaster Stubborn Denial, I see it's going to be pretty tricky for Jeremy to actually find a way to navigate to a victory here.
Yeah, there's obviously going to be some grindy sideboard cards you can bring in. Maybe a Mulligan's Command, Liliana the Last Hope.
Yeah. After sideboard, it seems like Grixis Shadow is going to get a couple more tools to grind out some advantage here. As far as the Rock's concerned, what do you think Nat's considering bringing in?
More removal, I suppose. I'd gather. I'm sure that there's some amount of Assassin's Trophies, Maelstrom Pulse, Abrupt Decays in the sideboard that could also be brought in. Maybe even some kind of graveyard hate in addition to the spell bombs. You can keep them off the Angler. I don't know if there's a Leyline of the Void in the sideboard.
What do you think about Surgical Extraction on Nat's side in this matchup?
It is an interesting discussion. I am not a fan of the card on the Rock side, but I do see the tendency of people to be like, well, they have a light threat, so let's surgical the threat. But sometimes the threat's not in the graveyard, and like you're just sitting there with the surgical in hand that doesn't do anything, doesn't affect the board.
Yeah, I'm generally not a fan of bringing in Surgical Extraction in any matchup that isn't very reliant on the graveyard. I could see an argument if you have worse cards to board out, especially when you're playing against an opponent that's playing Thought Scour and maybe only 12 to 15 threats. Of the chances of getting someone are a little bit higher than normal. I don't think it's the right thing to do, but I could see a potential argument, or maybe someone justifying that reason to bring it in.
I guess the other big question is, what do you cut for it? I mean, your cards in the main deck are already great against the matchup.
Right. Getting some good shuffling in there for Net.
I think he just wants to avoid having double Field of Ruin again. Plays too many black spells for that.
It's true. It seems the Rock is usually on 4 Field of Ruin and maybe even a Ghost Quarter. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I see at least one Field of Ruin.
I see an Assassin's Trophy in Nat's hand there.
Yeah, got Overgrown Tomb.
Lands and spells. We got keeps on both sides.
Bobbling Gnats. Watery Grave, shocking Thoughtseize. Take Jeremy down to 16. Wow, 2 Field of Ruins, 2 Overgrown Tombs, Liliana the Last Hope, Assassin's Trophy, and a Dark Confidant. A little bit land heavy hand and awkward with the Field of Ruins, but definitely like a defensible keep there.
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing against Thoughtseize and Inquisition, you definitely want a high density of cards. Every mulligan feels that much worse against Thoughtseize.
Yeah, a lot of times when I'm playing against a Thoughtseize deck, I generally keep any hand that has like lands and relevant spells, knowing that you have to draw some good things through the course of the game, but you're probably going to get a card stripped away. And Jeremy drawing in Nat's upkeep from the bobble trigger, and just a tapped Overgrown Tombs and passing. Jeremy may be doing some mental math there with life total as a resource. That's very challenging with Grixis Death Shadow. You have to juggle sort of your graveyard, your life total, the colors of mana that your lands can produce. It's all extremely relevant to how you play your deck, more so than almost any other deck in Modern. So something like you might want to have access to red and black after you Thought Scour if you draw certain cards. A lot of speculative fetching. But we get a Fetch Shock Thought Scour into Grimag Angler on turn 2, which is exactly what Death Shadow wants to be doing.
Cleared the way from that Assassin's Trophy on turn 1. So always feels so much better on the play to do that.
And Dark Confidant from Nat. Coming in for 5. Nat wisely elects not to chump block with the Dark Confidant, but we're going to get a Lightning Bolt. And I do like that attack just to let if your opponent is in desperation mode, maybe not having a removal spell, they might chump block, but you get a Savior Bolt, but that's the right sequencing for Jeremy there. Right, it seems like a basic swamp was to pick up on one of these draw steps for Nat.
I'm sure he's wishing that was the other Liliana in hand.
Right.
But I guess either one could get Stubborn Denialed here, so...
Nihil Spellbomb resolves. Scavenging Ooze also cannot get Stubborn Denialed. That resolves.
It's quite the combo there.
Right? Especially when you're playing a Tarmogoyf deck.
Yeah.
And Zombie Fish continuing to attack.
That's a real big fish, Travis.
Okay. Third wave Ska.
Yeah.
And another Lightning Bolt tags the Scavenging Ooze.
Surprised to see all the Lightning Bolts being left in.
Dark Confidant is probably a card that you lose to if you're Jeremy, and so I could understand wanting to keep in a lot of low-cost removal, but it does seem like maybe it affects a lot of card that I would consider cutting. And a Thoughtseize on that side. It looks like Summer Denial, a couple Snapcasters, and an Inquisition.
Pretty good hand for Jeremy.
Yeah. One more land opens up a Snap Stubborn Denial. But maybe perhaps Nat has a removal spell that they're going to be able to resolve now since the Stubborn Denial was taken with the Thoughtseize.
Yeah, maybe he just wants to get rid of the graveyard because those bolts, 3 + 5 is 8, you know?
It's true. And get a Field of Ruin deployed. Usually you see Nihil Spellbomb activated and then a black mana used to draw a card, but it does have the ability to just exile a graveyard without costing any mana. And Liliana minus, oh, we need to get a mill going on there. So we're gonna go and have an intervention there.
Get this rewinded, yeah. There we go. Easy fix.
And just Liliana to push, but in the graveyard, so basically same result.
Let's see if Jeremy can draw a land for lethal. Oh, I guess the spell bomb's still up now.
Right.
I misspoke.
And Jeremy just electing to attack Nat and ignore the Liliana. Seems wise. Inquisition grabbing the ooze. And looks like we might have a couple with that Nihil Spellbomb, perhaps have a couple draws to a removal spell.
No.
I'm gonna have to pay a black mana for that, Nat.
It's not a Relic of Progenitus.
No, but almost. There we go. Good job, production team.
Well, he drew an Assassin's Trophy.
Yeah, that is the out that you needed.
Can't play around a Stubborn now.
No, it works, but that is going to open up a Snapcaster Plus spell eventually for Jeremy.
Or are we going to
That's
see
your
an
plan?
Ambush Viper here?
It's a tempting play, especially with two Snapcasters and no spells in the graveyard.
Can get Nat to 1, turn off any fetch lines.
Definitely, but Liliana would just
Kill it the
next turn, so high cost just for a shock. I guess you could kill the Liliana.
That's another option.
Yeah.
That's probably the right option.
Choose your own adventure here. What adventure does Jeremy choose? Elects to cast the Snapcaster.
Well, he has lands now.
Okay. Definitely says that Jeremy does not have any burn spells in hand, elects to kill the Liliana, and passes the turn.
Yeah, Nat needs something like a Collective Brutality, maybe? I don't know if you'd have that in the deck.
Seems like that might be something if it was in the main deck you would side out.
Yeah. Just trying to think of a card that could get back life in. Well, that's a brick wall.
I've noticed that the rock decks lately, especially if we're going by online results, have been playing. Well, there was one list that had 4 Kalidas in the main deck, but most are playing 1, 2, 3. Is that a card you think you would keep in post board in this matchup, Mikey?
I think, yeah, it dodges Bolt and
Push
really
sometimes.
and push without Revolt, but the life gain is big, I think, in these type of like situations here where you're both getting your life totals low, and then also like your deck is full of removals, so like every time you kill one of their creatures, getting a zombie is just, it's like an insane value train. It's a must kill threat.
And also the exile clause to preventing like Liliana the Last Hope or Mulligan's command seems relevant.
Very relevant. Another Ambush Viper.
Perhaps that was to potentially draw a removal spell and then swing for lethal.
Is Nat Hellbent here?
I do not think Nat has any cards left in hand, correct?
Is there a Quagmire?
There is a Hissing Quagmire.
Or is it, I think that's a Blooming Marsh,
Is
actually.
it? Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good call. Oh, that was a pretty sweet play there for Jeremy to attack to get Nat down to 1 to be able to delve for the Gurmag Angler. And going to game number 3. Alright, we have 8 players hanging out here today in this little tournament going on, and we're staggering the matches by about 15 or 20 minutes so that we'll be able to see a lot of different decks utilize this new Mulligan rule, which hasn't seemed extremely relevant in this particular matchup. I think we had 1 Mulligan in game 1 from Nat, but both players seem to draw decent hands.
I think they both probably didn't really want a mulligan in this Thoughtseize mirror.
Yeah, I definitely have some decks on deck like Dredge and Tron that will probably utilize the new rule a little bit more than these kind of grindy fair decks. I mean, Shadow can have pretty busted starts, but it does feel almost on the level of like Delver and Legacy where you're just playing efficient threats, but a lot of fair cards.
Yeah. Other than Team or Battle Rage, I'd describe the whole deck as fair. Yeah, I'm excited to see Dredge with the new mulligan rule.
Yeah, I mean, you just basically need a Dredge card, a land, and a Faithless Looting, right?
Yeah, or if you're playing Vintage, a Bazaar of Baghdad.
Well,
and
yeah. I mean,
anything
you do need something else. You need a Dredge card, but just Bazaar and
or a
Dredge
card on top, you know.
Yeah, true. Okay, turn 1 Spellbomb here for Nat.
A Field of Ruin. That's it's either a good sign or a really bad sign.
The 3 Field of Ruin hand, perhaps.
He's very good at drawing Field of Ruins.
Yeah, I think it is playing. The Rock is playing 4 of them. So you have a fetch and shock into a Thoughtseize here.
I think Nat really wanted to play against Tron.
Okay, basic Swamp, Tarmogoyf, Dark Confidant, Engineered Explosives, and Liliana the Veil. So, yeah, a land here opens up a lot of things, and that definitely it's gonna have probably a turn 2 play. I would, if you draw a green source, you're gonna open up the Tarmogoyf there. But even in Engineered Explosives on 1, to preemptively fight against the Death Shadow, I don't think would be the worst play to make.
Yeah, it's an interesting card. I often find myself frustrated bringing Engineered Explosives against the Shadow deck because they just end up playing Angler anyways.
Okay, Liliana the Veil is the take. And we get a Inquisition from Nat. Lightning Bolt, Thought Scour, Jeremy's Liliana the Veil, and another Inquisition.
There's a face down card there.
And 2 lands.
Okay.
Can't take these. Can't even see them. Interesting call here between the Liliana and the Inquisition, I think. I guess a Bolt is reasonable if you think you're going to actually play the Dark Confidant, but
I think if you take the Bolt, I think you're just gonna get your Bob Inquisition. So
what's your pick?
I take the Liliana. It is a card you don't have a current answer for, and one that can run away with the game.
Yeah, it looks like Nat elects to take the Inquisition. And does it pick up a Thoughtseize?
Because now you can't play a threat going and then pass back, and then Liliana comes down and edicts you.
Yeah, it was a Thoughtseize. So, still have E, Tarmogoyf, and Dark Confidant. Probably picking... Oh, looks like Jeremy takes a Goyf.
Has the Bolt still for the Bob, so...
Shocks on the Steam Vents to represent that Lightning Bolt. And... might be time to cycle this Nihil Spellbomb.
Oh.
Thought Scour on Jeremy's instep. Milling over Street Wraith and Thought Scour. Okay, Nat's going to pop the Nihil Spellbomb in Jeremy's draw step. Picks up an Assassin's Trophy, but still short on that land. A pretty grindy game here, if Nat's able to draw a green source.
Or just any third land, I think.
Right. A little bit slower, but the third land definitely eventually gets you a green source with that Field of Ruin.
But also Jeremy's just kind of spinning his tires, so... Oh, well... There she is.
Versatile card in the matchup, but also, I think the ultimate isn't super game winning like Liliana the Last Hope. Usually just ends up being a couple Stone Rains. And Dark Confidant. Cycling of a Street Wraith there. Jeremy probably really looking for an actual attacking threat right now.
It's interesting that he bolted the Bob there.
I kind of like it, just continuing to plus the Liliana and when you don't have cards in hand.
That's fair, I guess.
Were you thinking about minusing the Liliana instead?
Yeah, I think minusing Liliana is fine there.
Alright, get the trophy. Nat was able to pick up a basic forest.
I think the thinking behind minusing Liliana is that I want to get something off the Liliana,
Okay.
some kind of advantage, and the Edict is an advantage, whereas the plus is 1-for-1 in essence.
And get a draw off Bobble and a draw for turn. At this point, if you pick up any Street Wraiths, I would be tempted to just cast them if I was Jeremy.
Can't Fatal Push a Street Wraith.
Jeremy may have picked up a Snapcaster there. And we get a Fatal Push, or sorry, Field of Ruin on this Demons. And Shadow just running a basic island and swamp, so not going to find another land there.
Yeah, Jeremy's land base is looking a little dimmer now.
A little bit of a judge fix there. Jeremy does have to shuffle with that Field of Ruin, but nothing's really been scryed, so a random card off the top is still a random card here.
Hey, it's a free shuffle.
And there's a Quagmire. Scavenging Ooze is a threat. Jeremy is at 8 life currently. We have at least one Street Wraith in Jeremy's graveyard, and Snapcaster gets a little awkward with this Ooze if Nat's able to untap.
Currently just has the swamp, so if Jeremy's gonna snap bolt the ooze, now's the time.
Gonna have to fetch Shock to do that. Alright, that is the play. Seems like Jeremy's just seen an Angler and a Snapcaster as far as attacking threats go this whole third game.
Yeah, it's one of the ways that the Shadow deck loses is just not seeing enough threats. Might we see a Hissing Quagmire activated here?
I'm curious, I might, Jeremy is only at 5. Quagmire as an attacker is a legitimate threat at this point in the game. An Inquisition, maybe to pave the way for an attack with the Quagmire. A Dismember, a Stubborn Denial, and a Jace Varen's Prodigy.
Now that is a spicy piece of tech.
It looks like maybe Jeremy was wanting to hold on to Dismember, paying the full cost without life and Stubborn Denial instead of deploying that Jace.
Yeah, that checks out. I think Nat has an Assassin's Trophy in hand for the Jace. Oh, doesn't care about the Jace, is going for the life total.
Taking Jeremy down to 3.
Cannot, in fact, play with your lands like that anymore. Sorry, Dredge players.
Huh. Jeremy's still not deploying that Jace. That's interesting.
Maybe he was trying to bluff a spell there.
And we are playing Death Shadow for on Jeremy's side, right? That is a card that's still in the deck. You don't sideboard those out.
You don't play Street Wraith and Mishra's Bauble if you don't have Death Shadow in the deck. Ooh, now there's a Haymaker.
Yep, yeah, that's gonna. It basically makes any land into an additional card. Fetch lands turned into 2. Cool.
Can you cue up that clue sound effect, Travis?
Get the production team on that one.
Stretch goals.
I do like how Nat did bring the clue tokens.
I don't see a clue token. Should have got one.
I think
there.
it was used.
Oh, instantly? Okay.
Oh, another Thoughtseize. No, it wasn't used because we'd have a counter on the tracker then. Looks like we have a Thoughtseize, Stubborn Denial. Those Thoughtseizes are awkward right now. Push, attack, and good game.
Well, the clue didn't matter.
Alright, we've got a couple other matches queued up for you here, but I'm gonna just step away for a second and get those all set up, and we will return shortly.